In today's video, we're going to do a little investigating into why people are packing up their bags and leaving the nation's oldest city, St. Augustine, Florida. What's up everyone, my name's Thomas with Real Broker here in St. Augustine, and if you're looking to buy, sell, or invest here in northeastern Florida, make sure you reach out to me and my team directly. All we try to do is give you the information so that you can make an educated decision on what you already want to do. So in this video, we're going to cover a couple of different reasons that people are leaving St. Augustine for greener pastures outside the state. We are going to talk about cost of living, we're going to talk about the dynamic changes to St. Augustine that are causing people to leave, and we're also going to talk about the weather and traffic here in the area. All of these things are really important to know about, especially if you're considering to move here to St. Augustine. So I just want to put it out there and be as transparent as possible about some of the good and bad things here in St. Augustine so that you're well aware and more informed on that decision. So I would say the main reason that people are leaving St. Augustine is going to be because of the cost of living changes here in the area. Now, prior to 2019, St. Augustine was an extremely affordable place to live. Now, of course, we were still kind of rebounding from the low lows of the great financial crisis during 2008. The market really didn't start picking up till 2012. So pretty much everywhere across the nation was still getting their footing when it comes down to the housing prices and where they were kind of landing at. St. Augustine is no different in that respect. If you made $50,000 a year prior to the pandemic here in St. Augustine, Florida, you can afford a very comfortable lifestyle. You could afford to buy a house. You could afford to go out and have a nice dinner and drinks. Whereas after the pandemic, things really changed pretty drastically. The main change that we saw was going to be the change in the housing costs and the rent. The housing costs back in 2019, just 5 years ago, for the median sale price across every type of property here in St. Johns County was $349,000. That's accounting for single-family homes, townhomes, and condos. Now, if you compare those prices to today, the median sale price across single-family townhome and condos is $545,000. That's a pretty significant increase over just 5 years. And along with the housing price increases, we've also seen increases in rental prices as well.
Yes, I would, Ken.
When I was a kid, I lived a block from St. Augustine Beach, from the St. Augustine Beach and Fishing Pier. I only lived a block away from that, and our monthly rent was around $800. Now, I moved here in 1998, I moved out of here in 2005, and we paid $800 for pretty much that entire time we were here. So things rapidly changed over the past 15 years.
That's impossible.
But especially over the past 5 years since the pandemic. The same apartment that I lived in back in the late 90s, early 2000s is now around $3,000 a month to rent. That community was actually part of a condo conversion. It was rentals only, but then someone bought the whole community, they switched it to condos, and they sold out each individual unit, and now you'll actually see Airbnbs within that community. So the cost of housing's gone up, the cost of renting a house in the area has gone up, and many locals actually make a joke about it like, hey, bring back $1,000 rents. We missed the $1,000 rents. And that's because that was a very real thing here in St. Augustine prior to the pandemic. Now you're gonna see most rentals in our area be somewhere around $2,000 to $3,000 a month for a single family home or a 2-bedroom condo townhome. The simple fact of the matter is that most of the locals, the people that were also born and raised here, they've seen the town change pretty drastically, and their pay hasn't kept up with that. So if they didn't buy a house prior to the pandemic, they're pretty much priced out of what they could afford here in St. Johns County. The largest employer here in St. Johns County is going to be the government, and we all know that government doesn't pay the best paying jobs. They do have great benefits a lot of the times, but they're not typically the best paying jobs in the area. I just took a look at some of the jobs that they had posted, and for a custodian, I think they were paying around $37,000 a year, which is really difficult to live on these days, especially if you're a single income household. But most of the jobs from the county and from the state in general are going to be around $50,000 to $55,000 a year. And because we don't have very much industry here outside of the hospitality industry, that's what the majority of people make unless they're commuting up to Jacksonville to get a different paying job up there. Which even when I was a kid, that was a thing. If you wanted a better paying job, you went up to the metropolitan area of Jacksonville. Now the people that were living here, that were born and raised here, are effectively priced out of the market if they're making that average salary of $50,000 a year, because we have such a high influx of people retiring, people looking for a new lifestyle, that are making significantly more money than what our county here affords. people moving from California, people moving from the Northeast, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. All these people are pretty much selling their homes up there and moving down here with cash that a lot of the locals don't have. On the verse side of that, there's also people that have owned their homes here for a long, long time, and that is another factor of why people are moving out of St. Augustine. They've seen their home, probably one of their biggest assets, climb and climb and climb in price, and they decided they're gonna cash out, take the money, and run to greener pastures. And this actually makes a lot of sense. If you take a look at the top 5 markets that people in St. Augustine are moving to, they're all much, much cheaper markets than here in Florida and what a lot of other places have to offer.
I've ever heard.
Just to list the top 5, number 1 is Asheville, North Carolina. Number 2 is Cullowhee, North Carolina. Number 3 is Knoxville, Tennessee. Number 4 is Columbia, South Carolina. And number 5 is El Paso, Texas. For the most part, all of these places offer a lot more affordability for the people living there. Another thing that factors in with the cost of living here is the cost of insurance. So unless you've been living under a rock, you've heard that Florida's had some major problems with their insurance industry here because many companies decided to pull out of Florida because of all the high claims that we have. At one point, Florida was accounting for 70% of the nation's claims when it came down to insurance. Now to note, there have been some significant changes to Florida's insurance landscape here in the past couple years, which we are starting to see a light at the end of the tunnel where insurers are starting to come back and offer some more competitive rates to people, but we're not out of the woods yet. Homeowners insurance can be extremely expensive, especially if you're in a flood zone, and also if you're in a condo insurance has also gone up, and a lot of the condo buildings have had to raise their HOA fees because they're now having to pay for a new set of insurances. Homeowners insurance has definitely gone up. Some premiums have gone up double of what they were previously, especially if you're in a flood zone. Now, if you're living in flood zone X, you're not exactly seeing the steep increases that we've seen on the news with premiums doubling or tripling for many people, especially the ones living close to the water or in flood zone AE, but you still are affected by the increases slightly, and if you're on a fixed income, that can make it very difficult. Condo buildings as well have seen a steep increase in their insurance premiums. We all know that the condo collapse happened, a couple years ago, and because of that, we've seen a lot of changes in regulations, and then also insurance carriers decided to raise their prices, which also then raised the HOA prices for many communities. One community I looked at in the past year with one of my buyers who bought down in Palm Coast raised their HOA fees from $700 a month to $1,000 a month just overnight. That's because the insurance policy for the building went up, so the HOA had to charge the end user more. And that's something that you have no control over. It's something that if you have a mortgage, you need to have insurance. So you kind of have to bite the bullet and either pay, or you need to sell your unit and move somewhere else where you don't have that same cost hindering you. These are all very real problems here in St. Johns County and in the state of Florida. I'm just bringing them to you. Another reason that people are leaving because of the cost of living is because that their pay isn't enough to keep up with the cost of living. Just recently, the teachers union actually denied a raise from the county, which was the first time in I think 30 or 40 years that they did that. The reason that they denied the raise was because it wasn't enough. It wasn't compensatory to the raise in the cost of living here in the area. I think they settled around $55,000 a year, which in my opinion is still not enough for these teachers to be able to afford and live comfortably here. And so not only teachers are leaving, but locals are leaving, and pretty much anyone that's making around that price point is deciding to maybe move to Jacksonville, where there's a cheaper housing market and more jobs, some better income opportunities out there, or they're going to work in separate counties. They're going to live here in St. Augustine and work in Jacksonville so that they can bring their income back home. The second big reason that people are leaving St. Augustine is going to be the change in the dynamic of St. Augustine. Now, if you're asking me personally, I think that everything that's happened within the past couple years, aside from the drastic rise in housing prices, is a great thing for St. Augustine. When I was a kid, I didn't really like living here, right? Now as an adult, where I can experience, I can go out to eat, go out to drink, I can go see a show, I can go see live music, farmer's market. There's so many things to do here in town where when I was a kid, these things just didn't exist.
A restaurant, it ain't everything in the
But many people don't like change at all, and we seem to see that from a lot of the locals that have lived here their entire life, and they remember it a completely different way than it is today. And that's no different than many people that are from your hometown. Everyone's hometown has changed over the past 10, 20, 30, 40 years. It's inevitable, right? And there's some changes that I don't like, right? But they're kind of minor, right? You know, when I was a kid, they used to have blueberry fields on St. Augustine Beach. They used to have a lot more trees and protected area. And anymore, they've kind of ripped them out and put condos in, right? But at the same time, people need a place to live. We also want to keep the housing prices as low as we can. So if we don't keep building, well, then prices are just going to keep going up a lot faster than we want them to. So there has to be a give and take. And something like that is something that I'm definitely more for. Hey, let's build more houses so that we can bring down the cost of housing here in our area and make it more affordable for more people. Now, when I say that on like Facebook or Instagram, or I'm talking to someone in the comments of one of my social medias, they're like, that's not how it works. If you build the houses, people are going to move here. And it's like,
Sir,
I don't think you get supply and demand and how that works, right? It's kind of, they work together. You know, if there's no supply and there's no demand, well, okay, well, prices should stay the same. But if there's no supply and there's a lot of demand, well, then prices are going to skyrocket, right? So I don't really get their argument, but I try to be as understanding as possible. And the example I give is a reason that a lot of people don't like the changes, right? So they're seeing, swaths of forest, swaths of farmland, horseland, all that kind of stuff changed into subdivisions that look pretty much the same. It's single family house with an amenity center with trees and sidewalks. And that's really the gist of every neighborhood in the country, right? But they went from having a nice picturesque landscape, living in more of a rural part of the county, and they're seeing it change so rapidly. All this is happening in real time here in St. Johns County, and I totally get being upset with that. I totally do. But at the same time, people need a place to live, and a lot of the locals are not super happy about all the development that we're seeing here. And the locals are definitely very vocal about this. Whenever someone posts like, hey, a new development's coming on here, if you read the comments on Facebook, they just lean into our county commissioners, say they're all being bought and paid for by these developers. I mean, I don't have any proof of that, and they never have any proof of that. But, there is a lot of development going on here. I think it is needed. I don't know if anyone's being paid off, but the locals are definitely not happy about the majority of the development happening. And one thing I slightly touched on earlier is that tourism and the rise of Airbnb has really changed a lot of dynamics of the neighborhood. So in St. Augustine Beach, they actually had rental vouchers for a while to make sure that if you wanted to become an Airbnb, you had to get on this list, because so many investors were buying homes just to make them rentals for short-term rentals that they were kind of changing the dynamics of the neighborhood. I was talking about the apartment complex that I lived in that got changed over to condos, and now you can rent Airbnb out of those, right? Used to be families and just regular people living there, and year-long leases and all that kind of stuff. And then you have a Airbnb above you partying till 2 a.m. You have people out drinking. You have people having fun. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's definitely not what you want if you're moving to a community. You want to be able to have your kids go make friends. You want to be able to know your neighbors, make sure everyone's safe. And that's something that, with the rise of Airbnb and the change of how fast things moved here, that a lot of locals don't like, and I'm totally with that. With that being said, there are tons of areas here in St. Johns County that is not allowed. Most of the subdivisions that are being built don't allow any rentals under 6 months. You might see some subdivisions that do 1 month rentals, but really it's not even a great investment strategy at that point, because you'd really only get maybe a couple of months based off of peak season here in northeastern Florida. So within the city of St. Augustine, they also have different zoning rules where if you're like RS2 zoning, the minimum that you can rent is 1 time per week, which means that you can rent it for a day, you can rent it for 7 days, all you can do it is 1 time per week. So if you rent it for a day, you can't rent it out for the rest of the week. So it doesn't make it as attractive for many investors than a commercial zoning would allow you, or RS3 zoning where nightly rentals are allowed. Now, the third reason that people are leaving St. Augustine is going to be because of the traffic and the congestion. Now, I've lived a whole bunch of different places, guys. I've lived all through the Northeast. I've lived here in St. Augustine, and I've lived in Jacksonville, and I can tell you that the traffic and congestion here is not bad at all. But if you're a local, if you've been living here for your entire life, if you're born and raised here, the traffic is way worse than it was. And I'm not denying that. It is worse than it was. But at the worst, it might add an extra 10 minutes to your commute. and that's if there's like a traffic, an accident, or there's rush hour, traffic because of tourism. At the most, it's going to be about 10 minutes to your commute. Outside of maybe night of lights, outside of maybe peak summer season where you're trying to drive through the heart of downtown St. Augustine. And with the traffic and congestion, that also has a lot to do with the development that we mentioned earlier, right? Because we've had so many people move here, all these new developments approved, the infrastructure for the roads and certain choke points haven't been able to keep up. Now, there are tons of plans, there's tons of road widening going on all over the county, so they do have plans to grow this infrastructure, but it just seems like maybe it should have been done a year or two before everything that's been happening since the pandemic. So if you get on 210 at I-95 in the intersection of 210, it's a mess, it really is. There's construction everywhere, there's traffic cones everywhere, and they're widening that road because of all the new master plan communities that have sprawled out along the northern part of St. Johns County. And that's the same with International Golf Parkway. They just built the Buc-ee's there, they just built a Costco there, they're going to be building a Home Depot and a Bass Pro Shops. Sometimes you'll see at the intersection of I-95 and International Golf Parkway, cars backed up all the way onto 95 trying to get off of International Golf Parkway. And then you can even take 16 and 95, which is the closest exit to where I live, closer to downtown St. Augustine. They're working on it right now, but it seems like they've been working on it for 2 years now. And me included, and a lot of the locals are like, what the heck, let's get this thing done already. It's been taking forever. It's construction, the road is terrible, potholes all through it. I actually made a funny video where it's like a guy driving and it's first person view like this, and he gets like bounced out of his seat because of all of the traffic and all the potholes and everything that's just going on there. It's really a terrible intersection. The fact that when they redo roads that they don't make it as smooth and easy as possible drives me nuts. Like, it should be a regulation like, hey, these should just be nicer. It shouldn't be like patchwork. It should be like, hey, let's make a nice route of traffic and then we'll work around it.
What? Sorry, force of habit.
And another thing to note with the traffic and congestion is going to be your access to downtown, your access to the beach, right? If one of the main reasons that people move here is for the lifestyle, things I just noted, right? Going downtown, getting a nice meal, going to see some live music, maybe go see a comedy show, maybe go to the beach and hang out for the day, maybe go fishing. With all the tourism that we've had, especially since the influx of tourism since the pandemic, downtown just changed their parking regulations. They used to stop all parking past 6 p.m. Now everything's raised till 9 p.m. So you have to pay to park all the way up to 9 p.m. Monday through Saturday, right? They changed that too. It used to be Saturday, Sunday were free. Now it's not. So it's only Sunday that's free. So pretty much all the locals are kind of like, you know what? I gotta go down, I gotta deal with traffic, I gotta deal with congestion, I gotta deal with a 30-minute wait at a restaurant. Maybe I'll just go somewhere else that's not in downtown or in St. Augustine Beach. And that's the same thing with the beach too. There's only so much public parking. So if you don't have a four-wheel drive vehicle, you're kind of at the mercy of how many people are there. And during the summers, during the off season, it can be very difficult to just go to the beach if you don't have four-wheel drive. And if you moved here for that reason, if you've been living here for a long time and always had that access, why wouldn't you want to get out? And the fourth and last reason that people are leaving St. Augustine is going to be because of the weather. Now, most of the people that are living here that are locals, born and raised, they know what the weather is. That's not the main reason that they're leaving, but I will say the people that have moved here from out of state, that are maybe from the Northeast, maybe from California where they have like perfect weather year round, they do summer here, the dog days of summer, July, August, and they can't take the heat. Literally, it's 100% humidity. It's like 95 degrees almost every single day, and it is really awful. Now, there is a good trade-off with that. With that 2 months of extreme awful heat, we do have about 10 months of beautiful weather. So just looking today, pull up the app here, but looks like it says that we got high of 83 degrees, low of 69 degrees with a 65% humidity rating. So it's freaking gorgeous out right now, guys. Sun is shining, clouds and sky. It's beautiful. Great day to go to the beach, great day to go fishing, great day to just be outside. But that's also, not accounting for our hurricanes and our torrential rain. If you're not from here, you're not going to be used to that. Now, typically, we really don't get hit historically with hurricanes right here in St. Augustine and Jacksonville area. They typically tend to hit further south and go inland. So we've been really, really lucky in that respect. The last big hurricane that hit here was going to be Hurricane Michael, I believe, or Hurricane Matthew, my mistake, 2016. Yep, it was back in 2016, and that was a direct hit. We've had some flooding. There was some, of course, a couple of power lines knocked down, a lot of people without power for a while. And they definitely had a lot of flooding as well. And if you aren't prepared for that type of lifestyle, I mean, that's something that everyone here is used to. It could be a real shock to you when something like that happens, because a hurricane, especially when you're above a Category 3, is no joke. It can be very scary, right? And for most people here, if it's under a Category 3, they're taking the day off, we're throwing a hurricane party, go over to your friend's house, have a couple beers, watch some TV. It's kind of like a snow day as it is up north. But when you get over that, Category 3 mark and it's a direct hit and it's king tide, it can be pretty scary, because flooding can happen pretty quickly, and how fast it rains will accumulate that water very quickly. Now, aside from the hurricanes, we do also have some torrential rain. During the summers, it can rain for an hour straight like you've never seen before. You would think it's a hurricane, but it's not. It'll flood, it'll flood your yard, it'll flood the mulch out of the mulch beds, it'll come into your house sometimes. That's very, very rare. But if your house isn't graded properly, you could potentially see that. And if you're not used to that, it really is kind of a shock, because it is so much rain. It's raining so freaking hard. You don't even know you can't see as you're driving. You got to go 10 miles per hour, 20 miles per hour on 95. It's happened to me, and it's not fun to do. It's not fun to drive in. But after about an hour, it'll start clearing up, and it'll be night and day. It'll be dark as you've ever seen with rain clouds, and then it'll go sunny and beautiful, and it'll dry up all that water pretty quickly. But then it's going to be about as humid as it'll ever get right at that point. And that, for the most part, are all the reasons that people are leaving St. Augustine. It's going to be the cost of living. It's going to be the change in the dynamic of the town. It's also going to be the traffic and congestion and the weather. But for the most part, St. Augustine's a fantastic place to live. So if you are looking to buy, sell, or invest here in northeastern Florida, make sure you reach out to me and my team. All we try to do is give you the information so that you can make an educated decision on what you already want to do, which is buy, sell, or invest here in the area. If you'd like, you can join our Facebook group. It has the same symbol over here, facebook.com/living in St. Augustine. You can reach out to me directly if you want to set up an appointment, or you can schedule with me on the Calendly link below. Until next time, guys, I'll see ya.